Hi, I'm John Valentine, and welcome to another edition of On the Marquee. And I want to pause just real briefly here and thank John Cox and We One's Pediatrics in Canfield for their sponsorship of today's edition of the show. Our guest today has started here at a very young age. I think he just told me 13 years old. And he has risen through the ranks and has become one of our foremost choreographers, actors, and directors. And I speak, of course, of Mr. David Jendre. David, welcome.
Hi, Jack. Good to see you.
Good to see you. As I said, you started here at a young age.
Very young. It was more like 10.
What got you started here at the Playhouse?
Well, you know, I was a grade school kid, and we had arts programs then. And I got to be in a play in grade school. And the teacher that directed it said, you know, they're having auditions for civic children's theater at the Youngstown Playhouse. So I came to audition, and I got cast in the lead. So as a little kid, and it must have been 1963 or 64. And as a little kid back then, when this building was almost brand new, it was a very big deal. And of course I was hooked immediately. The bug bit, and bit really hard. I think the children's theater director then was Gary Eldridge. Okay. And it was a year or two before Bentley even came here. So I kind of predate a couple of important people, but as a very young kid.
What kept you coming back outside of, you said the bug bit, but what was it about that kept you coming back to the Playhouse?
Well, you know, it's the, I always say it's the misfits that end up in the theater. I was one of the misfits, still am today, proud of it. I really didn't fit in anywhere else. School was, I was a smart kid, but I didn't feel comfortable in school. I wasn't, you know, one of the bullied kids. I wasn't a jock, you know. I wasn't a nerd, really. I was a little bit more of a brain, but I kept it hidden because I didn't want to stand out at school. And then, of course, we had, I went to a Catholic school, and we had nuns. And it was, I went through all of that. I went through all of that too. But you know, when I came to the Playhouse, I felt like I was at home.
Different world.
It was a different world. And I made very close friends here. Some my own age, some a little older. But yeah, it was just a loving atmosphere to be in.
Most everybody, especially if they start here as a young kid, have people to look up to that they kind of, I don't want to say idolized, but it kind of urged them to continue, whether vocally they got that urging or whether it was just being around those people and working with those people. Who were some of those people for you?
Well, when I was a kid, starting here, Sally Skelding, who was originally Sally Ferguson and married Jim Skelding here at the Playhouse, well, from the Playhouse. She kind of, you know, encouraged me to go on and do bigger things. And then when I actually started doing main stage musicals, Dana Snyder and Janice Aubrey taught me almost everything I know. And I've got to hand it to them because they were brilliant for, you know, the time, just to take a bunch of no talent kids or semi-talented kids and turn them into professional looking performers. And you know, I give them kudos, you know, got to hand it to them.
Well, they were very active here for a long time.
Yes.
And worked with a lot of people here.
Yes.
Now, of the shows you've done here, I mean, the list goes on and on and on, whether it was actor, director, or whatever it was. Which of those do you have favorite moments of?
Oh boy, there are a lot of them. My first musical was Oklahoma. Might have been 1969. And I remember the first orchestra rehearsal.
That's a memory.
Still to this day, we were backstage, the curtain was down, we were waiting to open the curtain to do our first tech rehearsal. The orchestra started playing "Oh, What a Beautiful Morning," and I just will never, ever forget the chills that ran up and down my spine. And it wasn't only me, it was like half the cast who were newbies, really, at the time. We were just so thrilled. It was incredible. You know, I could go on and mention the first time I directed a show was Grease in 1980, 81, I think. And opening night was just so hectic. It was incredible because it was one of the first rock musicals that the Playhouse had done. And it caused a big fuss. And the newscasters were all over the place. I remember Stan Boney backstage putting microphones in all the kids' faces and mine. And I had to run downstairs to Bentley and say, Bentley, the newscasters are you know, it's 15 minutes to curtain and the newscasters are still up there. So Bentley had to come running up and throw them all out of the theater so we could start the show. I remember that one was very funny. Boy, there are a lot of them. The opening night of A Chorus Line in 1986 was just an incredible experience because I never thought we'd be able to pull it off. And it was one of the shows that Bentley always thought that I could do. And I had my doubts. But opening night, it was just like opening in a professional theater in New York. It was just so special. I will never forget it.
Well, I wanted to touch on that show and also on Cats, because Cats got a phenomenal amount of attention because it was a phenomenal show.
I know, it was Cats.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not an easy show to do.
No.
I mean, approaching that show and getting what you got out of that cast, I thought was unbelievable because it matched up to any professional production of it I had ever seen.
Well, you know, it was me rolling the dice. I had just done Chicago, the big Bob Fosse musical, A Chorus Line again for the third time. And I thought, well, you know, how do I top this? Well, Cats was the biggest title I knew of. And I remember from the old days when we used to pass out forms for the audience to fill out what show would you like to see. The first show was always Cats. So I'm like, well, okay, what about this show? Is it possible? Can we do it? Do I have the talented kids? Well, when I auditioned for it, they came out of the woodwork. Some of the best people I had never seen, and then some. And I just had the best luck with that show, with the stage management, the design team. My assistant choreographer was Emily Pasquale, and you know, I just had to sit back and relax and watch it happen. And I don't think I was ever so comfortable in any show I'd ever done. I just knew it was going to be a hit, and for sure it was.
Well, in any show of that size, we've got a big cast, and that was a huge cast.
Yeah.
You've touched a lot of lives in your time, be it whether you were directing or choreographing, doing both. What do you want somebody, young or old, no matter what their age, what do you want somebody to take away after they do a show with you?
Wow, I don't know. You know, that's a hard one to answer because I try not to be, wow, that's a hard question. You know, I just want them to feel like they've been accepted for what they are, that they've given their all of the talent that they could give, all of the soul that they could give me, their real selves, not anything in particular, but I want their essence And that's what always makes the best shows to me. When the kids just strip away all the artifice that they have and just give me their soul, and then they give the audience an incredible performance.
Well, you worked with John Kenley.
Yes.
For many, many years.
Many years.
And John was a great guy.
Yes, he was.
How did that come about that you got involved with him, and what were your years with him like?
Well, with Janice Aubrey being a musical director at Kenley, we did Fiddler on the Roof at the Playhouse. And Lord knows, I forget the year, it might have been 72 or 73. And Leo Muller, who was a choreographer at Kenley, directed the show here at the Playhouse. Well, they all encouraged me to go and audition for John. And for 2 years in a row, I took my Snoopy number, Supper Time, from You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, and sang it and danced it for John. And he would sit there and say, "Darling, you belong in the theater." And finally, the third year, they called me up to do a specialty routine in the show She Loves Me. And John loved it. He loved my humor, he loved my dancing, and from then on, he was a mentor to me for many, many years.
Well, most people know you've had a long friendship with Tommy Tune.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
It came about through John Kenley. The first year, right after She Loves Me, he cast me as Charlie Chaplin in Mac and Mabel. And Tommy Tune came in to be one of the guest stars. And we kind of clicked right away because Tommy was 6'7" and I'm 5'4". And the very next year he did Walking Happy, and he cast me as his sidekick. And we got along very well. He was a joy to work with and so talented. And I learned a lot from him. Years later, he invited me to come audition for Grand Hotel in New York. And unfortunately, things didn't work out the way I would have liked them to. But it was just great seeing Tommy again and having him remember me after all those years.
The Playhouse, obviously, as many of us know, have gone through a lot of changes in the years.
Yeah.
Ups, downs, they've had their troubled times
All
like
around.
a lot of theaters. How has that affected the Playhouse's relationship with the community, and how do you think it has changed because of those situations?
You know, that is a good question. I don't think the essence of the theater has really changed in the minds of the community. There were times when people thought that it was on its last legs and the doors were just going to close. But you know, they never did. And people just kept coming. Even through the bad days, we could always find an audience. They weren't always a big audience, but it was at least a steady following. It did have a couple of really scary moments when we were afraid the theater was on its last legs, but it kept coming back. And starting with, boy, you know, I'm going back about 7 or 8 years. When we did Chicago, suddenly the audiences were incredibly back. I mean, selling out every night, you know, for the 2 weekends that we ran. And I think, and I'm not, you know, patting myself on the back for that, but I think at the time the community thought, you know, the Playhouse is alive again. And right after that, suddenly there was a renaissance, and the audiences came back strong. They came back younger, which was always our goal.
Right.
And to this day, we're still doing very well and looking forward to the future.
I need to take a quick break here and thank John Cox once again and We One's Pediatrics for their sponsorship of today's show. Staying on that same thread, what is it going to take, do you think, with what we just talked about, for the Playhouse to maintain its success over the next 10 to 20 years?
Just continued quality productions. I always think the artistic side of it is sometimes the most overlooked side. We always talk about capital funding and, the building itself, staff, and this is a hard one, Jack. But staff and, this is a hard one to answer.
It is a tough one to answer.
I know what I'd like to say. I'd like to see the artistic quality of the theater rise to the occasion. Over the past, it's been rough because we lost our fabulous scenic designer, Paul Kimple.
Yeah.
And I personally think that we've never recovered since then. It's hard going into an artistic endeavor without people who have the artistic background to share your vision.
Exactly.
So I think in the future, we need to find those people in the community that can either donate their time, donate their artistic abilities, and just come and help us be the quality theater that we really need to be to go into the future. I think that's very important. I think that's very important.
And going into the future also involves staff turns over, people leave for whatever reason, actors leave. What advice would you give somebody who maybe was in a show with you or even just saw a show that you were in, who wants to follow in your footsteps and maybe work here at the Playhouse down the road somewhere?
Well, it's always just come and show up.
Well, yeah.
Come audition and see where it goes from there. If you don't get cast, then work backstage or assist in the office. Come usher. There's always a million things to do here. It was like when I was a kid. I just came and lucked out, with the roles that I got. But even when I wasn't on stage, I was backstage pulling curtains, running follow spots, almost anything I could do, running props. There are a million things to do, and anybody who wants to do it can do it.
Right, right.
Yeah.
When you have done your last show, which probably isn't for a long time yet, how would you like to be remembered?
Just as the guy that gave his all trying to entertain an audience. I just always, that was the most important thing. I like to hear the applause and the laughter. If I made an audience member happy for a night, if I made them forget their problems, if I made them laugh, that is what I'd like to be remembered for. And I think that's an important thing.
Well, you said advising people to give their all. Well, you have certainly given your all for a long time.
Well, thank you, Jack. Yeah.
The Playhouse has certainly benefited from it.
Thank you.
And I thank you for coming in. And I want to thank David Jendre. And I thank you for joining us. And we'll see you next time on the Marquee. Bye-bye.